Hi friends, and gardening noise notwithstanding, we're here, we're queer, we don't want any more bears, and we've got a few interesting observations about type and cognitive functions to share with the general public. In this instance, the we is really just me and the gardeners. Me and the gardeners making love on a Monday morning. Anywho, I believe we were talking about the fascinating world of typology and its many, many wonderful incarnations. So, last two typings that I've done were not published, but were informative. Yeah, I had to give. Everything's fine. Things are fine. I don't know what else to say besides that. Things are fine. You met some super sweet bears over the weekend? Well, good for you. When I say we don't want any more bears, I mean it metaphorically. Bears is just a metaphor for things that are bad. Anyhow, as I was saying, hello Lemon Melon, hello Ludafe, hello Winston's mom, hello Rachel Lapalosa, hello Dark Sunshine. Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your rears. Because I'm gonna hump 'em, yeah. I had two typings that weren't published. You saw the vid yesterday of a bear kissing a deer? I'm disrupting your worldview. Bears can't kiss deers. They can't kiss a deer without eating it. That's the problem with trying to get your bear to kiss your deer. Anyway, the last two typings I did were unpublished, unrecorded, or recorded but not published in one instance, unrecorded in the other. This lady I typed last night was an ESTP, and this other lady, I typed her as ESTP. I'm thinking she's an ESFP, who's further driven home the point that you can train yourself for all the TI questions I ask, even if you're polar potentially. I think she's an ESFP, but that was one of the most informative typing sessions I've ever done for me. It taught me so much about typing people because she went in there determined to convince me she was an ENTP and did. And I should have been able to at least get the fact that she was an SE on, because the thing is she couldn't do any Yankee Pankies, and that's really the top level NE test. It seems like those are difficult for everybody except for NE 1-2. Although that's not really true. I've seen ISFJs do well on those things as well. My mom was an ISFJ. She could certainly do them. So I don't know. But maybe it's a front stack, back stack thing. I wonder if my dad can do them. Well, there were a couple of good indicators. I knew someone was fishy right from the outset. I could just tell. I just got that. I don't trust my NI very much. But it was really informative about the extent to which somebody can purposefully mimic something and get me sold on it. I think if I hadn't asked Rachel first, I may, I don't know. I watched that video you sent me. Rachel and I watched it together, actually. What is an inky pinky test? It's, for example, I give you the clue hilltop water spout, and then I tell you it's an inky pinky is the answer, and the answer is mountain fountain. So this lady fooled me into typing her as an ENTP. Fooled both of us. She fooled both Rachel and me into typing her as ENTP. I think she was ESFP. I told her last night I thought she was ESTP. But having slept on it, I don't think her TI was 1-2. And when she described what she had attempted to do with the TI questions, which is she trained herself to just pay attention to the quantifiers, are really simple. Well, I mean, they're not really more complex or simple than each other. But a second example would be roadway flesh is the clue. It's an ink pink, and the answer is street meat. A third example would be bunny addiction is the clue. It's an inky pinky, and the answer is rabbit habit. Well, thanks, Winston's mom. Anyway, it's a pretty reliable test for trying to nail down slot at least, or maybe at least side of the stack, you know. But thing is, she had also trained herself to NE. The thing is, though, it was I should have paid more attention to the content of it. It was really well, make up one then. Betting tips 3,000. That's the challenge. Yeah, okay. Well, maybe I'll respond to that. You could, if you could respond to it right now and just tell her that I'm live streaming about the question right now. I think she's an ESFP. And I think she's trained herself. She watched a bunch of my typing videos and trained herself to do the TI stuff and the NE stuff. But my NE test I should have caught that. I should have caught the NE part. The TI thing is just further confirmation that if you really train to do so, you can train yourself to fake pass the TI test. If you specifically train to do that. Because she gave me some good TI answers, but there was nothing TI about her. It was like I saw no naturally occurring TI at any point. And her FE seemed more 6 than it did third. And although I'm not sure about that. I'm still unsure. I'm still unsure about the TI question. I probably should type her some more. Anyway, she didn't want it recorded at all, which is really interesting and makes me think she's an ESFP as well. Because an ESTP would want that recorded and would want it published. They got me, right? You know? And she got both of us. She got us. So, the thing is, the takeaway from that is there's two things, one of which is positive and one of which is sort of unfortunate, which is, the first thing is, my NE tests are sound. If I had granted to them the legitimacy that they deserve, then, and really paid attention to what I was getting from the lady, I would have figured out she was an SE dom. And the second one is that I need to diversify my TI questions somewhat. And that one's a little bit more challenging to do because I picked the low-hanging fruit as far as stuff you can just do. I don't know what the game Brain It On is testing. I don't know what it tests. Rainbow is beautiful. Color is beauty. Shades braids? I don't know. How many syllables? Well, the thing is, what she wanted to do was apparently provide me with data that was useful to me without exposing me publicly, which is odd, you know? Because I'm going to expose myself publicly about it anyway, you know? It's not like I'm not going to talk about it just because just because things didn't go the way I wanted it to go smoothly in the way I expect things to go normally. This woman was a trip. I'll tell you that. She was a trip. That's a lot of extroversion. But oh well, this woman I typed last night, who I think was an ESFP, and I typed her as ESTP. But I'm pretty sure she's an ESFP. All my NI is saying ESFP. Everything in my soul is screaming ESFP. But they're tricky, man. ESFPs are tricky types, right? They're incredibly good at their third slot TE when they want to be, I guess, you know? That's what it boils down to. It's basically drawing shapes to solve challenging physics puzzles and trying multiple ways to find the best solution. Well, no, they're good at, if they want to, at understanding what I'm testing for. I mean, the thing is, Jonathan Vasani, I actually did a whole bunch of both NE and TI tests because I was way more than I would normally test for, except for the fact that I was Erica? Not Erica. I don't know what her name was. I don't think it was Erica. Maybe it was. Let me look at the calendar. No, it wasn't Erica. That's later. It hasn't happened yet. I was typed in INFJ, but I don't know what I am except an Australopithecine. No, I don't. I can't include. I guess I would just say that they're extinct, right? Are they or are they not extinct? I'm not sure. No, that didn't happen, Jonathan Bassanti. That's only ever happened one time. And the person who made that happen had to put a whole lot of effort into making that happen, you know. It's not representative of a pattern. Well, I mean, they do the basic intelligent thing to do in that instance, which is they study the tests ahead of time. They figure out how to game the parts they can't do. You know, it's they have capable enough NE that they're pretty good at gaming that. They can game it in terms of quantity. They just can't game it in terms of quality. And that's the thing that I need to remember is that while the quality aspect is less an objective metric, it's one I can distinguish between very easily. And I need to trust my instincts regarding that. You know, it's like the thing is what you couldn't game was the Inky Pinky test. Well, in this instance, she knew what meaning I was attributing to what result, and she wanted to fool me. You know, and it's the most impactful way you could possibly correct me. You know, because it concretizes my wrongness in a way that is impactful. It's consistent with an SE DOM. The fact that she didn't want to record it is much more consistent with FE6 than third. No, but in this instance it didn't. She corrected me. No, she didn't. She absolutely did not. She wanted to show me that as an ES whatever, she could convince me that she was an ENTP, but she knew she wasn't. She knew she wasn't. She wanted to show me, I guess, that well, she was challenging the legitimacy of the test. That's what she was doing, you know. But the thing is, she was helping me to make it more legitimate in the process, and I don't think she was intending for me to not want to gain the knowledge there was to gain from that experience, you know. And the thing is, I told her, no, you couldn't have possibly gamed the TI test that well. But there's a reason why I kept asking her so many TI questions. It's because I just got this feeling that what she was. Yeah, exactly. She was a very helpful person to me by doing that, and it was nice of her and considerate of her to not have us record, but unnecessary. It would have been informative for everybody to see, I guess. But you know, she didn't want it to be published, so or she didn't want it recorded at all, so we didn't record it. Yeah. And then the night before that, I typed in ESTJ, who thought she was. I think she is too. No, she walked through it a bit, but you know, sometimes she had figured out a like trick to certain kinds of the syllogism questions I had asked that she was applying to those ones when she could, and that those ones would be quick. And so I was getting a mishmash of different kinds of data on it. But one way or another, she got almost all of them right, but she got a couple of them wrong. And it was I didn't. It was like, okay, what am I doing with this here? Because it doesn't seem exactly like 1, 2. It seems like 3, 4, 5, 6, or 8, but it can't possibly be. She's definitely an action type. She's definitely an action dom, you know. So the thing is, the point is this: that order in your physical environment isn't really TI at all. That's a TE thing. But if you are an INFJ, mistaking that for TI would be consistent with TE 7th. Anyway, obviously, most people aren't coming in attempting to game it like that. And so most of the time, I don't need to worry about the test being that robust. I can read people to some extent too. And that's the situation here, is I didn't trust my own instincts at all regarding this woman. Because I don't like trusting my instincts. I like trusting reliable things that I can point to a big pile of empirics about, you know? But the problem here is if you've studied a bunch of my tests, as I've gotten more standardized about how I go about asking things, it provides better comparisons between the piles of empirics, but it also makes the test more gameable. You know, the more standardizable it is, the more gameable it necessarily becomes. Except they aren't, though, Habili. I've typed enough NIDOMs and tested them on Inky Pinkies to know that any 1-2 are vastly superior at them, consistently across the board. So that's just not right. Right. Well, I mean, the thing is, I don't mind that happening last night at all. Right. It's. Well, I mean, have I typed you, Habili? And the thing is, it's okay. So the 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 real test is whether or not you were able to make your own ones. Like I'd say, okay, well, make up a few of them real quick, and then depending on, you know, that's the thing I would consider the borderline between NE and NI. I mean, there may be occasional exceptions. I don't know. I have to look at it in totality of all the NE tests, I guess. But uh, the thing is, if you're an NI DOM, I've usually eliminated the possibility that you're NE before then. You know. Um, Frontier accumulator. How many syllables? 2 syllables. Well, I mean, the thing is, it, the thing is, betting tips 3,000, and this is the key thing. Uh, Gaming is like weather. It's we talk about it in terms of percentage border hoarder. Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Uh, Although Frontier, it's not really a very good clue for border, but I'll I'll take accumulator as a good clue for hoarder. But I don't think border is a very good clue for Frontier. I mean, Frontier is a very good clue for border. Do you? Well, that's the point. I would never make that mistake. Hi, Hambone. Long time no see. How you doing? No, it wasn't tough. It's not even a synonym at all for that. It's like, you don't have to have 2 word clues. You can give more words in the clues than that. Well, in this instance, she probably felt like she was pretty confident about her type being ESFP, possibly ESTP, and wanted to see having studied and tried to master. The thing is, if you're NI fourth, uh, you're used to the truth being instrumental to something. So, in this instance, it was instrumental to helping me to get a better sense of the scope of the claims I can make about the various kinds of questions I ask. The TI polar test is a good test for virgins and even half virgins, right? I define virgins as people who aren't even familiar with typology, and half virgins as people who aren't familiar with my way of typing them. Non-virgins, people who are familiar with my way of typing them. This lady was a was like a whore. Okay, she she was the very opposite of a virgin. So she had studied the test with the intent of doing well on it rather than getting the correct type from it. And that's okay. I accept that that's the sort of challenge I'm going to have to be able to face, and that she helps me to face that challenge better. I don't think I'm going to be fooled again by SE imitating any. Or an SE front stack version of any. I don't think I'm going to be fooled by it again. She taught me a lot in doing that. She did me a great service. And I don't think she did herself a great disservice at all, because I think in the end, I get that she's an ESFP. And I agree with her. And what I have to say is that doesn't anyone who supports a political ideology make the truth instrumental to something? Well, yeah, I guess that's the case. But I mean, the thing is, what you're talking about there is mythology. Okay, if you're talking about politics, then we're talking about. Okay, yeah, yeah. I suspected at first, in fact, that she was an ENFP, but um, I mean, Ben Shapiro's said things like, "I think we should deal with things on a case by case basis," which is a pretty reasonable thing to say. We should avoid big, overreaching pieces of legislation and make smaller, individuated pieces of legislation. Is a pretty reasonable thing to say. I mean, I agree that he spent a lot of time playing the teams thing to his detriment, and with legitimate loss of credibility accordingly. But I think he's kind of acting when he's doing that. I'm not sure. Yeah, Jonathan Pisani points out that it makes sense that somebody would do that, especially TI Polar. TI questions really aren't that difficult, and having trouble with might produce a natural, the hell, how am I screwing this up? And then a desire to figure out how to answer them correctly, or at least to perform relatively well. So it's like she didn't really perform 1, 2, but I was so convinced she was an action type that she had to either be 1, 2, or 7. So I let myself fall victim to sort of a TI heuristic there. Yeah, I should use that more. Yeah, I should have used it with her. You're right. I knew I was going to hear that too. I knew I was going to hear that from somebody. I've thought about it too since then. Um, the thing about her is, I feel like I typed her correctly. I feel like I had her down pretty. No, that's fine. You're not attacking. Um, Yeah. Because she seems kind of charming. Not all ISTJs are chronically awkward. What type is best for sports commentary? Well, I think it's ENTPs, but ISFJs can be quite good too. Like Chick Hearn is my all-time favorite sports broadcaster, best of all time in any sport by far, and he was an ENTP. She's well loved. She's a well loved ISTJ. The thing that makes ISTJs seem awkward when they do is that they have been told they're awkward forever, you know? But I don't think that happened to that lady. I really think that people are neurotic, get neurotic when they're critiqued on their FE, and I think antidepressants can change a personality type. No. Hi, Eric. I wanted to tune in. Law. I understand you're typing, but I am pretty disorganized mentally and physically. I don't relate to high TE productivity. TE. Okay, well. I still think you're an ISTJ. But if an INFP wants to tell me they think you're an INFP, then I'll go with that. They are my supervisors, after all. My mom remembers a lot of things, too. You're an ENFP on medication? What did I type you as? What did I type you as? Did I type you as a big poo? You have trouble trusting ENFJs? Well, anybody would. I mean, ENFJs are big smoothies. So, what type did I say you were, Lauren? I mean, you might be an INFP, but I don't know. Regardless, you're that quadra, and you're an introvert. You're not an ISFP. Is World of Antiquity an ENFP? I don't know. How do I know about Erica? Because I typed her. I just typed her a couple days ago. And yes, some ENFJs have pretty banging TI too. They can often succeed on the TI questions. I think INFJs think that they're awkward. Most people think that they're chill and cool. INFJs are much more. If I type you INFJ, there's no chance in hell you're an ENFP. You might be something else, but there's zero chance that. I mean, I agree with you, Habili, that hangovers cause people to overuse slots they would otherwise less use. It was my case that being a drunk in general made me more cautious about my interactions with people and less ideationally engaged with the outside world as a risk avoidance approach. Because I couldn't trust myself, you know. But the thing is, that didn't change my cognitive function stack. It was still my cognitive function stack, and it was just my affect that changed. It was a lot different. If you were to ask third parties, their correctness about my type would be less accurate when I was an alcoholic. But I would still self-report the same way, probably. And I certainly would test the same. But it's like, well, here's another one. I typed this ESTJ 2 nights ago, who also didn't publish. And she was definitely not TI12, and she thought she was an INTP. I mean, she definitely was not. I don't know what type Aaron Rodgers is. Is he no longer the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers? I don't look to physical cues very much. I don't trust them because they don't link to good reasons. Well, I mean, I don't think there is such a thing as hard right or hard left. What you're saying then, Australopithecus, is that when people, I mean, she didn't say something that was right wing, did she? Didn't she say something that people found really offensive? I'm not sure exactly what it was, but she said something that offended everybody, if I'm not mistaken. What type do you think Richard Stallman is? I don't know who Richard Stallman is. Well, I mean, the thing is, if you're an ENFP, Lauren Cuthbert, then your NE is like mine. And you and I could just bounce back and forth off of ideas indefinitely, yada, 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 yada. And I don't remember the conversation that well, but, well, she wasn't prepared to sustain her team thing in the midst of a bunch of other team supporters, right? The problem is, that's not a good thing. That 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 people can't sustain their careers because of their team membership. Because the other team people are so teamy as well. Teaminess is inherently evil and wrong, right? So both the Trump supporters, the Trump lovers, and the Trump haters were both doing mythology instead of politics. INFPs are self-contained, pretty self-contained people. You know, uh, they they probably already they probably already have much of what they need and want, you know. Yeah, it is mythological now, and that's the unfortunate thing about politics is that there doesn't seem to be any substantial space for any kind of adult conversation about actual political considerations. Instead, it's all about, well, which team is this position affiliated with, and that's just children being stupid. Children being stupid is not something I want to associate with. No, I mean, politics is what happens when you have a representative democracy, right? And it can happen in a couple of different ways. You can go multi party, but there are definitely downsides to that. Uh, I mean, the thing is, you don't ever vote for Republicans, really. You vote for a person, and and that's the thing. They might like there will come a day when I do run for president, and whatever that day is, and I had an interesting conversation with Dark Sunshine over the weekend, and he reminded me of something important that I never think about, which is the world's not quite ready. The world's not ready for me yet. It needs to it needs to spend a little bit more time in the oven. And I'm not quite ready for the world yet. I need to spend a little more time in the oven. 4 years, 8 years from now, I'm still not even 60 years old, and so uh, I found that incredibly encouraging. Actually, it's one of the more powerful things anybody said to me in a long time. Because it's really easy to get stuck in our temporary time frames, especially if you're SI like me. Uh, but even Rachel gets has the same thing happen to her, where she gets caught up in the moment, things not being great in the moment, and sees global explanations. Uh, Life's not always easy, but there is a slow but steady progression occurring here with talking with famous people and occurring in my life in general that that it's really difficult for an intuitard to respect the process. You know, it's like I've got to follow through on these things step by step over time, continue to apply myself accordingly, etc., and things will eventually happen. I mean, these things continue to happen all the time, little bit by little bit, right? It's just that because it's a slow boil, I don't feel very, I, I have trouble, sticking with any plan if it's a plan, and the extent that to which that I'm able to really be determinate about what it is that I do. Well, that's a much easier thing to do, a much simpler thing to do, because you have a specific group of people that you're supposed to like. For example, I like to teach things where you can assess at the beginning they don't have in their knowledge these skills, and you can assess at the end they do, and in between actual teaching and learning has occurred. So I like to teach things like grammar, rather than writing, which you can't really teach. Or things like logic, conditional logic, or things like um, well, I guess I enjoyed teaching psychology. That was pretty interesting. But mostly I like to teach things that are very concrete. If I'm going to be working with somebody on writing stuff, it's better if I'm hired one on one, because then they can write the thing, I can go over it and fix it. But even then, I can't explain to them. And I have this conversation with Jeffrey's mom a lot, where she wants to know, well, why did you change it from that to that? Like, because that's what needed to happen. There's no explanation for you, Jeffrey's mom. It's an NI thing. You got to intuit what's best and intuit how to make it that, it doesn't collapse down into a set of TE things that you can just apply. No, being good gets you places. It does. Depending on the context, right? Like, if you mean being good at something, that gets you lots of places. But mostly best when when you're dealing in zero sum kind of things. If you're dealing in zero sum things where one person to win, another person has to lose, then being good at stuff matters a great deal. And the extent to which things are businesses in a free and mostly unregulated market, then they are closer to a zero sum than things that are like a public school. Do I tailor my coaching teaching style to different types? I didn't really know about typology when I was mostly doing my teaching stuff, so the answer to that is no. But, and even when I started learning about typology, by the time I was still coaching for some when I learned about typology, but I didn't really understand it properly until the last couple of years. I think that being morally good gets you somewhere. Being kind of robustly honest and open and subject to critique, etc., is affirming a positive moral good. For me, anyway. And I think what it gets me is credibility. It's really hard to say that I'm not subject to legitimate critique. That I don't engage people honestly. It's very difficult to make that claim. Even folk who enter the arena without selfish intentions tend to be changed by the experience of holding power. It won't change me at all. I've been in positions of power plenty of times, and I have well, right now you're right that the sides of authoritarianism and evil are winning in the world, but I plan to put a stop to that. We have plenty of examples. Most of our history, in fact, that mattered are examples of rejecting authoritarianism and evolving beyond just like disproportionate power relationships. The thing is, we're still in a country, and for most of us, in a world where just because you're important doesn't mean you can slap somebody that's unimportant and get away with it. You know? And and that's and it's a testimony to the power of egalitarianism. But the power of the West, so to speak, here I'll make you a mod temporarily so you can add your link. The thing is, the West forgets that its capacity to articulate justice in a meaningful way and explain why certain behaviors, the capacity to win the argument matters. Because we're not arguing about things anymore. We're just playing mythology battle. We're not meaningfully arguing about things. So we'd have to. Oh, I didn't really type you, Lauren. It was just like what, a half-assed thing in the middle of a live stream or something? Well, I don't know then. It's hard to say. It doesn't matter what time it is or whatever. So if you've seen any of my bedtime stories, for example, those stories occur often when I'm totally tapped out. It's like I've been up for forever. I'm super tired. I've got man. Well, I mean, the thing is, there's yet to there's not an adequate voice speaking a better, larger truth, except as far as I can tell, except for mine, you know. And the world's not quite ready for that yet, but it's getting there. It's like it's pretty indisputable that my political message is superior, but it does challenge the way people are doing business in the status quo, and it requires the people a willingness to be a grown up about things. So, does the West need to take a strong, hard military stance against yeah, it's still, you need to share it if you're going to share it. There you go. Well, Diamond, it is fair to say that at the moment the forces of authoritarianism are winning, be they China and its progressive and slow annexation of Taiwan, its imposition of PRC norms in Hong Kong, and or its encroachment on Indian territory in the Himalayas. I mean, it is the case that currently the bad guys are winning. And it is that clear cut, too. This is the problem, in part, is that to the extent that the West wants to argue, they want to argue about whether or not it's that clear cut. It is that clear cut. You know, you got people in the West siding with Russia, people in the West arguing in favor of China. It's insane. would not knowing how to use something be TE polar or SE polar? Well, not understanding how something works and not being able to figure it out would be TE polar. Like, doing a poor job of using a hammer, for example, or anything else, even your hands, is SE polar. Like the example of SE polar is I've given it before about when Rachel and I went to Subway and we got the SE polar new employee who didn't even know how hard to push down the bread to make it open. He just was like, raw, raw, just like didn't use his hands right. It was astonishing to watch this display of SE polar as this person hadn't practiced it all yet making these sandwiches and looked so clumsy in doing it. Look, the point is we can say that's oversimplifying things to say the bad guys are winning right now if we want to. But the reality is the bad guys are winning right now. And you know, there's a there's a there's an appropriate area for nuanced distinction making and an appropriate area is for less nuanced distinction making. Our overarching view of the world should be, in fact, that authoritarianism is making inroads into free and open societies around the world, while concurrently the fluidity of information, the freedom and openness of communication between people, is empowered by the internet. It's actively disempowered on a political level in China in a way that's particularly nefarious, trying to give people all the benefits of a free and open society with none of the costs, you know? From the perspective of those in power, those are costs. They're not real costs, really. So, if we want to say that that only some bad guys in some places, well, sure, but there is in fact a concerted effort on the parts of both China and Russia, and a successful effort in many instances to peck away at the institutions of accountability that comprise the engines of a free and open society. So, you know, there is a time for drawing some lines in the sand and actually following through on what you say you're going to do, you know? Like, if I were president right now, Russia would not be in Ukraine, and China would be backpedaling away from Taiwan in no uncertain terms. Because all they need to do to justify their behavior is to actually justify by genuinely winning the argument that what they're doing is just. They can't, they won't even attempt to. And since they have no claim to the moral high ground, the fuck we will back down. You know? I mean, it's somewhat unprecedented in history. Well, it is unprecedented that the expansion of the West has, well, I mean, certainly it was believed to be equally threatened by communism at the time. So this is not the first time that there's been a legitimate threat of authoritarianism taking over the world. World War II is another one, you know. I don't think World War I had the same level of threat to it, but certainly it's not the first time that authoritarianism has reared its head and threatened to be the dominant force in the world. And in every instance, it takes the righteous to stand up and say no more, and to actually have their fists and their guns behind it. You know, you can't you can't reason with authoritarianism. You have to treat it like a cancer. As long as it's staying where it is and not growing and not impacting areas around it, it might be wise to just leave it there and keep watching it. But it's certainly never a good idea to just let a malignant cancer take over increasing amounts of healthy cells. And big motto, it doesn't have to be perfect if it fits in the hole. Is that how you reassure men? Yes, but in fact, let's open that. I don't know what type of thing is. I don't normally think in terms of type like that. When I'm watching a video of something or reading about somebody or whatever, I don't normally think, oh, they're this type or that type. I don't think about it really. This is a big box. It's an unboxing ceremony. Wow. These are some pretty ponies. I'm pretty excited about these pretty ponies. These are unicorns, actually. They're unicorns, and there's a mirror, there's a brush, there's some hair things there too. Fantastic. Oh, this is a big one. There's a big boy here. It's Siberia the frost-breathing dragon? Wow. I'm gonna have to, This is great. Thanks, Winston's mom. These are fantastic. I like these ones. Wow. Fantastic. No, I've noticed that title for your network there. I get your emails. With their genitals, Lauren. With their genitals. That's how everyone flirts. Everyone flirts by rubbing their genitals on each other. I get the feeling Minnie and Tiffany are going to weasel their way into giving them those unicorns somehow. Yes. I think it's pronounced Network 9. Or maybe it's pronounced Network 90. That's how everybody flirts, Jonathan. That's step one in flirting. Go up to the girl you like and rub your cock on her face. Everybody knows that's step one. If she doesn't smell like your junk, then she's not really yours. Well, I think that what's going to happen here is that Step 2. Step 3, profit. I think step 2 is, hey girl. Or did I get those steps backwards? That might be step 1. Step 1 might be sup or hey girl. Step 2 is place cock on face. Step 3 is get kicked out of club and arrested. Oh, never mind. Step 3 is profit. You lose. Winner, winner, winner. Step right up. Everybody's a winner. Everybody wins. Everybody's a winner. Winner, winner, winner. Winner, 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 winner. Everybody's a winner. Everybody wins. Step right up. You lose. But I thought you said everybody won. Except you. You lose. Diamond and betting tips. I got a betting tip for both of you. A diamond ring will make everything okay. Give each other diamond rings right now. See how I incorporated both of your names into my solution? You two should bet. You should bet a diamond ring on who's more fussy. And then you both win. So did you bet on the Padres to win the division? Betting tips 3,000. Did you when I told you back to do that a long time ago? Right, I told you back to do that a long time. It's terrible English error. I hope you did. I hope you bet on the Padres to win the division. You got an actual tip? Mets to win the World Series? Are the Mets doing well right now? Now you make me want to look at ESPN and see if the Mets are actually doing well, if you're just fucking with us. I could bet on the Mets, but that would seem quite foolish. The Mets never win anything, everybody always knows that. The New York Metropolitans. Who's a Mets fan? Come on. Rachel's not even a Mets fan. She's from New York. Let's see. Wow, the Mets are 44-24? That's surprising. Look at that. They're first in the NL East. Shocking news, everybody. I've got shocking news for you. The Mets are going to win the World Series? You should have made that pick before they did really well. It doesn't count if you do it after they did really well. God, that's not a tip. That's just like Obvious Town. Don't take a trip to Obvious Town. That's not a tip. A real tip is a long shot. Like this one. I got a tip for you. The Padres are going to win the West. Now that's a real tip. It's a man's tip, they call it. My tips are macho. The Dodgers are 40-25. Oh, we're back in first place in the West. The Padres have lost 3 in a row. Oh, fathers. I always like the fathers. But I wish they kept one of their old... Met means tram. How do NTPs learn to be social? By socializing. That's a man's bet, Jonathan. That is a man's bet. The Dallas Cowboys winning the World Series? That would be surprising. The Metropolitans. The Mets are is short for the Metropolitans. The New York Metropolitans. And in England, what does tram mean? When's the last time that owner of the Cowboys actually put together a Super Bowl winning team? Was it back when he had Emmitt Smith and Troy Aikman? Is that when it was? When's the last time? Yeah. Yeah, I think he's still around, Winston's mom, Jerry Jones. But despite his hit and missery with the Cowboys, say he's doing a lot better than his brother Jim Jones. I've got to get more coffee in my cup. My cup has been emptied of coffee by my drinking. I'll be back shortly. Well, well, well. Look what the cat dragged in. Tony Romo. Tony Romo sounds like a rib restaurant franchise. Tony Romo's smoking ribs and flavorful tastes of barbecue. If you like flavor, you'll love eating at Tony Romo's, where we put flavor ahead of everything, even your safety. Yeah, everybody likes ribs. I don't disenjoy him. Your dad's name is Tony Ramos, and when he went to Japan, the airport, they were like, "We love your restaurant." 1996 was their last Super Bowl, huh? Well, that's 15, 16 years ago. That's not too bad. That's better than some teams. When's the last time that the Atlanta Falcons won the Super Bowl? It has to have been a long time ago. Yeah, I've watched plenty of South Park. I don't regularly watch it anymore. Like, I don't keep up with it or anything, but I used to watch a lot of it. Can you act like an ENTJ for a minute? I don't know if I can or not, really. I'm not really feeling very acty at the moment. You don't think the Falcons won the Super Bowl? I remember they were in one. I remember one year when the Falcons were in it. I think they might have been in against the 49ers. It seems to me those... Yeah, I guess the Falcons are AFC, aren't they? And what's a pram, Lauren? What's a pram, huh? Is that a tram that you take at the park? Oh, I hate everything that I make, and I hate everything that I do, and I hate being me all the time. Do you hate being you? Yes, I hate being Ericy every morning and every afternoon night as well. Yes, I hate being so goddamn Ericy. Oh wow. The Falcons gave up their lead at halftime, huh? Hi, Eric Thor. I heard you were present and accounted for at Frank James's 1 million subs live stream the other day. That's what Rachel told me. I thought, oh, I wish I had been there. Maybe he would have given me a shout out. But I wasn't, so what are you going to do? No, I just picked it up for a second. I don't really feel like playing the guitar. I'm not sure how long this live stream is going to go on for, but maybe a little while longer. I really need to make more Mindy's Club shorts. You know, it's like I want to try to take advantage of what the reality of the shorts thing is, you know, which is I'm an early adopter. I got in on a kind of a weird fluky thing, and it's $65. You spend a few hours in the woods communing with the spirits. Is that a euphemism for taking mushrooms? It's important to commune with the spirits. That's what we need to do, Rachel. We need to get mushrooms. It's been a while since we've had them. We need to go to the woods and commune with the spirits. Daily, if possible. Well, they don't work daily, unfortunately. Well, the dragon's got masculine energy. Sure, its name Siberia makes it sound like a girl, but I think it's a unisex name. Discovery Plus. Discovery. Dragons aren't real Discovery. What am I discovering? The make-believe world of dragons? It's not very sciencey of you. Well, I'm glad I'm live too, Gobtray. Viper's more masculine energy than my body has room for. I've got a lot of feminine energy right now. I'm just dripping with vagina. Your great-great-grandparents are looking down at you from the clouds, waiting for you to do something cool while you're just on the phone. That's fantastic, Eric Thor. That is very fantastic. I like that. What's my star sign? My astrological sign is that of the Taurus. Oh yeah, I'm a bull with horns. Row, row, row. Poke, poke, poke. Stab, stab, stab with my horns. Oh yeah. Born late in the month of April, Eric is a Taurus. I've never really identified with that per se. I never really felt like a Taurus as they've been described. They're somewhat more reliable than yours truly. And typical manifestations of them. No, yeah, the thing is Mindy's Club is a matriarchy for sure. The girls are in charge of Mindy's Club. Tiffany and Mindy mostly. Mindy's kind of taking a back seat of late as I find myself making something I feel like I should do for reasons other than just impulse. And I really should just go back to making them like the way I used to make them with just like these story arcs and stuff. It's just you got to have a good background, or else if you don't get a good thumb on it, which is auto thumbed for all of them, then you're screwed. You suffer from bouts of severe cluster headache every couple of years. A lot of people with this condition are now able to stop them with vitamin M. Oh, I do know what you mean. No, he means mushrooms. What brand of cigarettes do I smoke? The greatest cigarettes in the world. American made Marlboro Red shorts. Regular king size, you know. It used to be called king size. But now I tell people shorts because they think of them as being the short ones or the hundreds. Yeah, sometimes I get a little sick of cigarettes, you know. If I sit here and smoke them for too long, drink too much coffee, actually I've been doing it for like 2 decades. Can you give me some wise advice dealing with a girl who has attachment abandonment fear? I mean, it depends on what your goal is, really. Like, is this somebody you want to be with? Then I would have advice for you, which would be somewhat along the lines of Dark Sunshine's. Is it somebody that you want to help but not be with? I don't know. I mean, I have my own problem of that sort, which is can you give me some wise advice dealing with a guy who's married for decades now to a girl who has attachment abandonment fear? I mean, everybody has a certain amount of it, and that's fine. You know, none of us want to be abandoned. Everybody wants to feel as though they can rely on their relationships to stay put, that they expect to stay put, you know? Don't listen to Boba Fett. No, don't do that. That's a bad idea. You danced your butt off? Oh no. I hope you have a spare butt. Do you have a spare butt? A butt, a butt, a butt, a butt, a butt. A butt, a spare butt. To replace the one you danced off. Hump it out of her. Hump it out of her, Jeremiah. That's my advice to you. You just hump the attachment fear right out of her. Every time she gets fussy, you just hump her some more. Okay, fine. I'll stop being attachment fear. Oh, but he's serious as Australopithecus Afarianus. Your name's too hard. I'm going to call you Alcoholics Anonymous from now on. Go fly into a sarlacc. What's a sarlacc? What is love? My IQ is 90. Keep that in mind. Oh, mine's only 107. No, I don't want to Google it then. The Sarlacc is the thing Boba Fett falls into in the third movie. Well, there's one time I took an intelligence test online. It told me I was 107. I'm going with that. I like being 107. I'd rather be an impressive 107 than a depressing 120 or whatever. Well, he has on his Mandalorian armor, you know. It's made out of that special kind of metal. Mandaloid. And it's very hard. It's harder than a diamond and stronger than steel. Well, adjusted for relative inflation, my IQ is 430. Do you remember C.S. Joseph? Whatever happened to him? I don't know. A giant-toothed land sphincter. And the remaster, the Sarlacc has a beak. I don't know. I don't know what happened to C.S. Joseph, if anything. I'm not much of a C.S. Joseph fan. I mean, sure, I think he's incredibly wonderful, but, I mean, sure, I'd love to make love to him, but I know, we are so alike. We are so very, very much alike. You're on C.S. Joseph's list for science? He's got some pretty sweet fingerless gloves. Ooh. I wonder what he uses those for. Riding his bicycle? You know what one of the nicest presents I got from Winston's mom was? But then I promptly misplaced the hammers for it as soon as I got it. And so I never played with it really until we did this remodel and oh, he said women were sex objects? I had to apologize. That's so silly. What does that even mean? Women are sex objects. That doesn't mean anything at all. I mean, everybody can be a sex object. All it requires is a sex subject to do something sex to you. That's all it requires for anybody to be a sex object. Everybody's both a sex object and a sex subject. And also a sex observer. So, we're all of those things. Where's 8? Doesn't have 8? No, it doesn't have 8. Why does it have 9 but not 8? That doesn't make any sense. That's fun. It's pretty fun. I like that. It's one of these things. It's one of these things. It's a, you could call it a steel drum, kettle drum or something. Oh, let's see. The 8 is the 1. Okay. It's weird. It's got like 2 6s, 2 1s, 2 7s, 2 5s, 1 3, 1 2, and 1 4. So anyway, that thing's cool. I like that thing. Yeah, it's with these little drum doodads. It's the ancient grains of music. This is the quinoa of music. If you love quinoa, you'll love this drum. It does sound nice, huh? It sounds like quinoa tastes. Ancient. I'm not going to permanently hang it from the ceiling. Don't suggest things like that. Those are the kind of suggestions I follow. You watched Marco Pierre while enjoying quinoa yesterday? Quinoa is like Chipotle. It's not pronounced like it's spelled. Back to the topic of the live stream. Oh, yeah. So, the observation I had to make about ESTJs is that it's like if an ESTJ wants to negate your cognitive function ideas, it's a pain in the ass to get anywhere talking to them because they don't accept NI as any kind of an explanation for anything, you know, which is fine. I get there's not really an explanation, but it's like to TI out all the reasoning for it to explain all the NI in full detail is such a big undertaking, and they still don't get the big picture. I'm talking about ESTJs. Now, regarding that ESFP who fooled me, she, yeah, she's. I mean, what I took away from that is two things. Number one, you can tell when some. No. This was a lady I typed 2 nights ago. You can tell. I can tell when somebody doesn't have first or second slot NE and TI, but I can tell better than my tests. It's on subtle little things if somebody's faking it, you know? Yeah, 2 nights ago, lady. She came in, she thought she was an INTP, but she was very textbook ESTJ. One thing I took away from that also was I really like the NI polar test, at least on virgins, half virgins, maybe some, to a certain extent, even on some non virgins. I'm not sure, but it does seem to be the case that for the ESFJ I typed earlier that day, whose video published, and the ESTJ I typed later that evening, whose video did not publish, they were both NI polar. And I was really glad to get that ESTJ lady later because it confirmed for me that the guy earlier was ESFJ. I was a little concerned at the end of that ESFJ that guy might be an ESTJ, but I feel pretty confident now that no, we got it right. He was an ESFJ. The guy with the pink flamingos on his shirt, who knew so much about fragrances. He knew so much about fragrances. It was astonishing. He really knew a lot about smells, and like when I told him what cologne I wear, he knew exactly what I was talking about and articulated that it had a barber. It was in the barbershop smells category. So now I'm not saying they don't accept it. I'm saying I was talking about ESTJ. Okay, the ESTJ who I typed later that evening. Gave me some pushback on the typing, but I was able to confirm for myself in that evening typing that the ESFJ earlier, even though they both had NI polar, that's where I was going with this, is that it was good reinforcement of the NI polar test, which I don't get to reinforce very often. But it does seem to be the case that NI polar people, if you give them a long sentence and tell them to collapse it down into a short summary of it, that they can't do it. They'll try to include way more of your details than they need to every time, it seems like. But, well, I mean, that's the problem. I don't get very many chances to validate it. So having 2 in a row like that, it was pretty good, pretty nice to get. And they were both pretty clear cut, I thought, at the end of the day. The first one took me longer, the ESFJ. The ESTJs are pretty easy to type, kind of. Yeah. That astonishing, fragrant young man, exactly. What does this say here? Fun on the farm. Horse. These aren't farm horses. These are unicorns. It doesn't even say unicorn anywhere on here. It just says horse. Fun on the farm horse. But these are clearly unicorns. Anybody can see that. You'd think if they were going to bother to make unicorns, they would advertise them based on that fact. What does SE Polar mean? SE Polar, it's like, I'm not SE Polar, I'm FI Polar. SE Polar, though, has a similarly bad relationship with SE to mine. It causes them a lot more problems. So, it's like, I have trouble following through on what if I say I'm going to do something, it reduces the likelihood of me doing it. SE Polar is even more like that. So, they really have trouble with completing the concretization steps necessary to make ideas into realities. And unlike me, like, what'll happen is I'll tend to sort of find myself suddenly live streaming like I did this morning, where I wanted to talk about this lady I typed last night who was very informative to about my processes. How do I confuse an SI DOM with an NE DOM? Who did? I didn't. He just got sometimes people get the functions mixed up or whatever. It's not a big deal. Last time when you were live, I asked you which types are slow at finishing tasks. Your answer was the NPs. But what about the types that will for sure finish tasks but still slow during the process, and why? Well, probably ISFJs maybe are gonna for sure finish tasks but still be slow during the process. And the reason is they have bad TE. So it's like if you watch an ISFJ cook, they cook all, make a big mess, and then clean up at the end. They don't clean while they cook unless there's a compelling reason to do so, like they're cooking at somebody else's house. Nobody should take any offense on behalf. Nobody should anything on behalf of Amber Heard. She's a horrible monster. So if you ask a ISFJ, if you ask an ISFJ to clean, to cook, it might take them a long time. They're not necessarily fast at. Which types are best at finishing tasks? Probably ESTJs and ESFJs. And you might say, well, then how does that even correlate with SE? Well, because SE's got two conflicting elements to it. One of which is opportunism. But the thing is, to take advantage of any opportunity, you have to do some amount of follow through. And so the problem is, to the extent that you're following through on what you've already decided to take advantage of, then you're not looking for new opportunities. SE is designed to exist more as a real-time function, I guess you'd say, and so as a consequence, as EDOMs are more opportunistic than they are follow-through-ish. Well, you know that I specified ISFJs would do that. INFJs don't prioritize food enough to put that kind of energy into cooking. Like INFJs and ENTPs both are kind of like, we'll eat whatever. Just need to have calories and not be something that we find gross. Well, I suspect, Ruben, that you finish tasks like a mofo as well. That's the other types that are good at task completion are ENFJ and ENTJ. SE third. Both those types are really good at task completion usually, although ENFJs can get off the rails. But ESTJ and ESFJ as well. It's like to be that good at finishing tasks, you have to be blind to one of the knowledge functions. Knowing in both capacities is always going to immobilize some doing. Yeah, prioritization is a weak spot for INFJs and ENFPs alike. It's why they call us a mirage relationship. In part, is because there's this reinforcement of each other's weak spots, rather than a balancing against. But the thing is, whether or not they're actually weak spots is another question. Uh, it's like to frame a relationship that way is to frame it as useful from a third party's perspective. And whether or not the two people actually are good for each other in their day to day experience is a separate question, you know? I think what people want is more information about the personalities of the type and how they manifest in real life. Well, the thing is, people may want that, but to the extent that they're going to be discussing typology well, they're going to acknowledge that affect can vary a fair amount within a given type without changing the fundamental reality of that configuration. Hmm. Well, see, and like Rachel and I are both like that. We like the ability to not deal with things when we don't want to deal with them right then. And so, but as a consequence, we both cut each other an equivalent amount of slack. Like, I don't really expect her to do anything because whenever there's something to be done, I think, well, why would you ask her to do that? You could just do that yourself, Eric. There's no particular reason why she should do it. If it needs to be done and you could do it right now, why would you ask her to do something for you? You know, it's kind of a third slot FE thing, I guess. But equivalently, she doesn't really tell me to do things either. Uh, and nevertheless, we both have our expectations that, generally speaking, I'll take out the trash. Generally speaking, she'll do the laundry. I never do the laundry. She sometimes takes out the trash, but I'm really slacking on it. I'm looking at the trash right now. I was thinking I should take it out. What is your opinion on a partner who has a curiosity in how and why you work the way you do? I think it's important to some types that they share this interest in mapping, which is explaining how and why. Um, and for the mapping types, I think it's important to get with another mapping type because otherwise you're going to be battling too often about which should be prioritized, territory or map, which rather than what the rather than what the yada yada yada. I don't know. My wife always wants to do things right away, and if we don't, she keeps bringing it up until it's done. Doesn't watch TV. Is always emotional, complete opposite of me. I usually can do the things better than she can, but she wants to do them, which causes more things to happen. You do really well on my SI test for some reason. Well, that's probably because you're SI front stack. The thing is, anybody who's SI anywhere front stack can do well on the SI tests. Like, I can do just as well as an SI DOM on recounting a bunch of details. As long as, since the yeah, you probably shouldn't tell it then, but you can if you want to. Free country. But it sounds like you've heard me, but don't want to listen. I can hear you, but not listen to you as well. Yeah, the internet's a free country. Do you think you can do as well as an SI DOM? Well, I think what I was gonna here's what I was gonna say about that is, I don't doubt that I can't, but there's not a good way to. I don't. I haven't tested to draw out distinctions between 1 and say 4. And the way I test, which is to articulate a bunch of details in the last couple, something that happened in the last couple of days, um, is something I can do just fine. And I think anybody who's third or fourth slot SI can do just fine, because if you're third or fourth slot SI, you've got your SI working mostly to well, I mean, it's this weird thing that happens. It's like when Rachel and I've talked about this before, where we were driving. We went to the Whippet store one day, and then when I got back in the car, I accidentally fast forwarded where we were in this live stream that we were listening to, and then I tried to go back to where we were before, but I didn't. Get exact. I went too far back, and so then we listened to a little bit of the part that we had listened to on the way to the Whippet store. For every part that we were listening to, I could remember exactly where we were in the car on the trip to the Whippet store. So, but Rachel couldn't. So, obviously, there's something going on there with SI front stack that makes it keep track of things that don't matter at all like that. It doesn't matter at all where we were in the car. I skipped the actual saying of anything and stated a generic frame that's assumed to be a sound claim because of the outcome of previous tellings that I've said to you. Okay, well, I was assuming that the actual claim you were going to make was still coming. I was assuming you had an actual claim to make, and that you were not just stating that you can articulate things that I will disagree with. I don't disagree with that. You can articulate things that I will disagree with. Which cognitive function is responsible for knowing others' emotions, knowing something is wrong with reading the room? Reading the room is FE. I mean, those things you're talking about there in general are FE things, but FI can also be attentive to other people's emotional state if it's something that matters to you. It's like FI is responsible for harm prevention instincts, protective instincts. So while you might read the room, what and go like, "Ee, that person over there is really fucking up this their opportunity to speak here," you know. But unless you're FI attached, you're probably not going to try to chime in and save them. Well, connecting the dots, quote unquote, is NI, but that's, I mean, yeah, it's true, but it's talking about NI as a subject. The thing to remember is NI types, like SI types, are receivers. So it's easy for us to get jumbled up because we naturally are going to talk about cognitive functions as they play out as subjects because of just the way the grammar is built, I guess. But like as an any dom, I'm a quarterback. Receiving types are receivers. So it's not they're actively connecting the dots; they're receiving what's true. A quarterback, a thrower, and it, if that's part of the challenge that I have here is that I'm not I'm not here just throwing like the majority of the people who come to the stadium. If I was going to play quarterback to make them all enjoy their activity as receivers, then I have to throw very gentle, easy to catch balls that uh, are just like little lobs, so that the people who aren't very good receivers can catch them too. Then you get a lot of people trying to catch your balls if you're throwing little lobs like that, right? And that's why shit like Frank James's little comedy bits that make people feel as though they've got some NI connection with these types while just being mildly entertaining for a short period of time gets a million subs, right? He's throwing easy to catch balls. In fact, he's using his NI as a subject, but that's not his natural way of being. And for an NI Dom, their natural way of being is not to deliver NI or to even draw conclusions about things. It's just to know large realities. So I will never be that. That's true. I will never be better than Brady at checkdowns. I'm a different kind of quarterback. Well, I mean, I don't think the term underdeveloped is used correctly there. So to understand the function stack, you've got to understand that all functions are defined by the 1 and 2. So my function stack is NETI. Because I'm NETI, my relationship with introverted intuition is defined accordingly. My relationship with introverted feeling is defined accordingly. And it's constrained accordingly. So it's like, because the majority of my attentional will is directed towards being a subject slash object slash observer of matters of extroverted or introverted intuition, as further deliberated upon by introverted thinking. I'm necessarily um, I'm necessarily incorporating SI more actively in a metaphysical support role than I am in a native physical knowledge about the self, physical self kind of way. And that when we talk about a function being underdeveloped, my SI is perfectly developed for my cognitive function stack. It is unavoidably developed as it is for my cognitive function stack. I mean, it just means that he's good at reading in the moment and making changes. Um, but so the thing is, our relationship with the function is best understood not in terms of strength, but instead in terms of a limitation on a function imposed by the reality of who we are. That being something necessarily means we're not something else. Well, yeah, but not anyone can throw a ball 3 yards or less when it's 4th and 2 and you've audible to a the receiver delaying, making a block, and then going out into the flat, and then, or out into the middle actually, underneath the linebackers, and catching the ball right there because you successfully read that's what the defense is going to do. That's the challenge, right? Is being able to read that shit. I used to play Madden and before that NCAA football on the PlayStation, and well, those are the plays that really matter. They don't punt on 4th down when they need that final drive to win the game. I don't have thick tendons. I wish I did, though, now. Now I'm wishing that I did have thick tendons. I can throw a ball 30 yards and hit the target right on point, as long as I can determine what the target is after the ball hits. That's called the Texas sharpshooter fallacy, Ruben. Some quarterbacks make the impressive look easy. Some quarterbacks make the easy look impressive. Brady is the latter. I mean, the thing is, Brady reminds me of Pete Carroll in some ways. Pete Carroll, for being such a good coach, has remarkably few blowout games. Like, the Seahawks, when they're good, are still winning by a few points at the end, His whole strategy is keep things close and out improvise at the end, kind of. I think that's suggestive of a style of handling NFL level football. To sort of acknowledge that we're not going to outclass the other team most of the time because everybody's got the same access to quality players. Oh, I think you're underestimating the power of Pete Carroll. As a longtime USC fan, I hold a very soft spot in my heart for Pete Carroll. Right, but the thing is, a lot of coaches don't really live their coaching life like that. I don't know if I could throw a ball 30 yards. Probably I could. How does SI ignoring manifest compared to 6 slot SI? Well, 6 slot SI can provide you details when pressed. It will. It's not that difficult to get SI examples articulated by an ISFP or an ISTP because they don't have any NE, so they provide SI when required something from that pole. SI ignoring is really limited in the kind of details they're able to provide. So a good question for SI would be something like, have you driven in the car recently and listened to music? Okay. So what's a song you heard recently in the car? Okay. And where exactly was the car when that song was playing? Do you remember exactly where you were in that moment? That's a good question to ask because I can probably do that. And certainly I think an SI Dom would be able to do that if it's a recent trip, like earlier today or something. Yesterday maybe. And I don't think NI front stack is able to do that. But I can't say that with 100% conviction, but are INTPs the type most likely to always doubt they figured their type? Not necessarily. Okay. So Dark Sunshine says he's able to do that right now. Okay. So you're able to picture where you were when Mia Song was playing in the car? When you were driving? Okay, but you're not polar. I guess I should have said something I don't think a polar person could do. Rachel doesn't seem to be able to do it. But we didn't really test it very much. That's not remembering where you were. Where exactly on the highway were you? When I say at where you were is like this. I was passing the exit for Madre Avenue, but before I got to the north exit, the exit for Rosemead North, we were right there, and I remember I was singing, ah, and then my cigarette flew out the window. That kind of shit. If you can do that, then that's SI front stack. And certainly I don't think SI polar can do that. You know which highway you were on, and you kind of know which part it must have been. So the thing is, when asked those kind of questions, like, okay, well, when was the last time Rachel and I listened to the music in the car? Well, last time we listened to, yesterday in the car, we were driving back from Delilah's, and I had this urge to listen to some 80s stuff. I asked her to put on Huey Lewis in the News. So first we listened to The Power of Love, and then we listened to first we listened to I Want a New Drug, then we listened to Power of Love, then we listened to Peter Cetera, Glory of Love, then we listened to Peter Cetera, I am a man horrified for your honor. The first Huey Lewis in the News song we started to put on right around where the car dealership is, getting right when we transition from the 605 to the 210 west, and then Power of Love came on automatically right around Huntington Boulevard exit, and then I suggested Glory of Love right as we were getting off of the freeway onto Baldwin, and then the last one happened as we were waiting for the left turn onto well, then you're not doing the task assigned to you. The task assigned to you is to remember the last time you were driving in the car and what a song you were listening to, or a couple of songs. Okay, well, what they call autobiographical memory is really SI imprinting, you know. Well, then that question wouldn't work for you, betting tips. Okay? Then I would have to ask a different question. But if you do listen to music when you drive, that's a good question to ask. Well, if they're SI in the front and up at the top, probably. You know, I probably won't include those kind of details about in my stories about myself. And in general, I think the FESI types are more aware of the fact that that's boring. But especially the NTPs are going to be very much telling those details only to the extent that they link to something that has broader meaning like this. Otherwise, I wouldn't be telling you. I still might tell you the story of how we listen to those things, but I wouldn't include all the details that I just did about where we were in the car. And it's not like at the time I was planning to retain that information either. I had no thought that this conversation would be happening today, and so therefore retained that information on purpose. It's just there. No, that's not an exceptional memory. That's just SI front stack. My SI is fourth slot. I do not have an exceptional memory. It's just the difference of having it as a conscious way of paying attention, imprinting your actual experience, which allows me to remember where exactly I was when meow started happening, and no, I don't think it means they have an exceptional memory because in this case, it's worthwhile to draw distinctions as per Peter Dentici's distinction drawing, which is, you've got explicit, implicit, episodic, semantic. Uh, the thing is, it is the case that SI DOMs are going to fall into habits. Retaining and repeating exactly what I said is something that SI DOMs should be able to handle well. And NI front stack doesn't handle that so well. It's like NI front stack seems to generally be converting extended stretches of words into distilled ideas as those words are being spoken. Right. It's probably the case that we can direct our willful energy towards attempting to attend to those things, but it's probably going to be time very poorly spent. I remember in elementary school we had to do these assignments with standing up, reading a story on the wall, walking back to the chair, writing down what we remembered word by word. Terrible. SI Tool does a lot of that too. You know, one of my dad's favorite things to do is to say, "I know I've told you this before," and then retell a story again, despite the fact that he just told us that. I mean, no, that's definitely the case. Peter didn't teach you. The time spent trying to work on attentional deficits of some sort is a fool's errand, to say the least. You've got to be pretty anti-polar to think that's a good idea. Oh, you're agreeing with me then, is what you're saying. Okay. It's a fool's errand, right? It's like you can direct your attention. I could try to direct my attention to my feelings more, Sometimes I do when I think it's a matter where I have to judge with my feelings. But what does that mean? It basically means when I am doing that, that something's impacted me enough that I can't process normally, and I'm forced to feel my feelings until I figure it out. The thing is, I'm quite certain that in some sense, ENFJs and ENTJs have great SI. It just mostly takes place in terms of muscle memory. So it's like ENFJs, ENTJs may learn to play an instrument well, may learn to be great musicians. In fact, ENFJs make are often some of the greatest musicians or some of the greatest musicians of our generation, of our history, really. Like Billy Joel is almost certainly an ENFJ, and so is Paul McCartney. And both those are great songwriters and just fantastic, right? But it's because they muscle memory everything. And if you have incredibly blind SI, what you're left with is this. I'll just practice chords for 5 minutes a day, and then I'll imprint them into my fingers, and they do. It's weird. Muscle memory is the part of SI that I don't talk about very much, but is important. It's how INTPs and INFPs learn to do anything. It's the only way they can do anything. Is by practicing it. But they hate practicing shit. That's the curse for the INTP and INFP. Is they can get good at things really fast by practicing, especially like art stuff. But they hate practicing more than anything. Are you doing that right now? Yeah. I had an ENFJ not that long ago talk to me about his relationship with the keyboard. And it was funny because it's it was really like a way of enabling 6-slot NE. She's been on a video. Yeah, I typed her. Performing music is practicing. That's more of an NETI kind of, or NEFI kind of perspective. High FE types are best qualified to be the most evil type. Yeah, but they're usually not that evil. It's like the thing that I am unhappy about, or what I would call the accidental evil. Intentional evil is not usually the problem. It's usually accidental evil. The people who are being evil don't generally think themselves as being evil. Like everybody who fought so hard to freak out about COVID, they didn't think they were being evil. They just were siding with evil as desperately as they could. Well, you have to include the fact that we have both willful and non-willful attention that gets paid. So, if I'm deeply absorbed in a book or something, reading, and somebody comes up next to me and claps their hands next to my ear, I'm gonna, because I've just received something that's prompted my attention in a way that was unexpected, surprise, etc. Right? So it is the case that we all have at least proto-level functionality in all of the functions, whether it's willful, that is to say conscious, or not. We all have object permanence. To a certain extent, you know where you left your meow, and that it'll still be there when you get back. When you sit back down at your desk after going to the bathroom, you reach for your mouse, you expect it to be there. And that's basic proto-level object permanence SI. The same thing is true for NI. We all have basic proto-level NI. We know this is a lighter even as it continues to be the same lighter even as its appearance changes in our field of vision because of something called shape constancy. That's proto-level NI. The capacity to understand that a given object has a distinct identity. And that and the thing is, if we want a good definition for conscious, we have a good definition that we can use, which is, although it does seem to work better with SI types to use this definition than it does with NI types, but it's the capacity to remember instances of using a given function or attending via that fashion. The extent to which you're able to recall instances of attending via that fashion, then something can be called conscious or willful. I don't mind answering these questions at all, Godfrey. Right now, I'm enjoying it fine. I don't mind answering questions about typology, and I rather enjoy it. I don't like it when people come in and it's their first time or something engaging with me, and they're trying to challenge shit that they haven't looked into enough. I don't like that, because then my answer is going to be, okay, you need to research this a bit more by watching some of my videos. If you have an objection about TI or something and want to know, yeah, no, NI is shape constancy. That the identity of a thing. Look, if we didn't have NI, in order to know this was a lighter, we have to look at it from every possible angle that you can conceivably look at it from, at every possible distance you can conceivably see it from, and imprint all those experiences so that when we encountered it in our vision again, it would link to one of those specific previous experiences, and we'd go, okay, I know what this is because it's happened before. Without intuition, we'd have to know everything like that. Intuition is what allows us to know that even though we haven't seen this from every possible angle, at every possible distance, that if I see it across the room, I know what it is. It's a lighter. Now, this particular shape of lighter is kind of unusual. I might not guess what this is right away across the room, but I would definitely know what this is across the room. Yeah, I'm working on it, sort of. Oh, speak of the devil. Somebody was saying earlier, Sean, that they missed you. Intuition is just a collection of subconscious experiences. I mean, intuition is knowing based on the identity of the thing you're knowing about external to you. It's basically external knowing. It's called introverted intuition because none of the epistemology functions can properly be called extroverted, really. The epistemology functions being those functions that know or decide things. FI and TI determine things. Determine's a better word than decide. Determine the status of things. Where does intuition begin to relate to abstract ideas then which don't have facts that the lighter appeals to? Well, that's what it means to be an intuition dominant. The meta-analysts, that is to say INFJ, ENFJ, ENTP, and INTP, are fundamentally more concerned, when talking about things anyway, about the map than about the territory or the reality. So, my concern is about what kind of claims we can defensively make about attention that link reasonably to both what you might call the intuitive reality of it, which is that 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 the reason we haven't adequately understood humanity before is that we haven't parsed this thing properly in terms of fields, objects, and vectors, in terms of subject, object, and observer. There's a set of different sort of NI ideas that are underlying what I'm saying that makes it both different and uniquely powerful compared against alternatives. But that's because I'm concerned so much about the map and so little about the reality that I spend all my time being correct and carefully establishing claims that I can sustain, and very little of my time caring about any kind of meaningful outcomes for myself, right? If I cared a lot about outcomes for myself and was driven by that or motivated by that, then I would obviously be not doing this right now. I'd be making a more purposeful video of some sort that was designed to get me viewers, and I'd try to maybe copy Love Who, or he's got a good strategy going in terms of his cognitive function videos. They're tightly edited. They're not dumb, but they're not overly complicated, and he does a good job of picking juicy topics that people are going to want to watch, right? And by not publishing too many videos and by being consistent about what he's doing, he accrues a lot of subscribers pretty quickly. But I'm just not like that. I prioritize too much my Effie Polar is not socially incapable, okay? There's nothing inherently awkward about not caring about how you're, not attending to how you're perceived. Whether or not you come across as awkward is going to depend on a lot of other factors. I mean, the same way they play out now, Australopithecus, which is there are some types of the world rewards in the status quo and some types of the world doesn't reward in the status quo. In our current status quo, the world rewards SE, it rewards TE. To a certain extent, it rewards creativity a little bit, not that much, It rewards FE. It doesn't so much reward FI, and it doesn't so much reward SI, although it expects you to be competent at it. And it definitely rewards the SI frame of reference for SE, where it's more of a follow-through thing than an opportunistic thing, because people want predictability. They want you to be able to follow through on what you say you're going to do, etc. Well, not attending to it. It's not that you don't care about it. All FE polar people care about it. None of them attended to it very consciously at any point. And Basanti, well, I agree that you've expanded my understanding of INTJ by doing things well that are often associated with FE, but are not limited to that. You've helped me understand how INTJs can successfully work around their FE polar in a variety of ways, and can do so more successfully than ISTJs can, because they come at it from a universal frame of reference, which is appropriate to understanding how things play, right? But I can't really recommend any books about typology and BTI or cognitive function. My position on it is that everybody's gotten it wrong heretofore, and that what I'm presenting here is uniquely and exclusively correct. And that those other things are just going to lead you astray. This is unlike most topic areas, where in most topic areas, the more broadly you research it, the more clear of a picture you get as you get all these various different pieces from different people. That's not the way it works here in cognitive functions, unfortunately. Well, I mean, SI without reward. I guess I mean, people expect you to handle your own eating, drinking, sleeping stuff just fine. You know, oh, I couldn't go to sleep last night and therefore couldn't get up in time for work this morning is not a good enough excuse. Effie Polar is not socially incapable. Effie Polar is not attending to the dynamic social systems and their impact on things. Well, I guess when I say unfortunately, I mean, unfortunately, there aren't a bunch of people starting from my spot and then taking up talking about cognitive functions. Like, Dave Superpower, he's got a bunch of little disciples out there having more conversations about his nonsense off on the side, maybe making videos of their own. But that's not the nonsense that we want to see proliferating. We'd like to see the actuality of things be proliferating. But that is going to start. I guess it's lucky for me that it starts with me, but it's not lucky for me that it stays with me because I have to have this conversation all the time with people and say, well, actually, I don't have anything I can recommend you. And then they go, okay, well, what kind of an asswipe is this guy? It's like he's saying that nobody else is right at all. No, I'm not saying that nobody else is right at all. I'm saying that to the extent that they're right, it's going to be misleading. It's like 2 times 2 may equal 4, but that doesn't mean you can get the correct answer by adding the two numbers together in most instances. So, you might go, well, look here, it says 2 plus 2 equals 4. That's right, isn't it? Well, yeah, but the whole book is predicated on the idea that multiplication is adding. So you're going to find instances where they're right, but it's going to be misleading if you think that it's indicative that the engine of their car is working properly. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that new groove. I talked to ESFP last night who successfully gamed both. Well, successfully gamed me on the TI test and the NE test, really. But I shouldn't have been gamed. It is possible, is my takeaway on the TI Polar test, that if you are a student of my typing sessions and you are willfully trying to figure out a workaround from them, it's possible. I do believe this lady I typed last night who came in trying to convince me she was an ENTP and did convince me of that, at least enough to type her as that. Although I should have trusted my instincts more, but she proved to me that, okay, the TI tests, I'm going to need to come up with some approach to this that's... The thing is, it's not that difficult to do. It's just such a question would take a longer time to establish and ask. So it's like, thanks, mind of a girl. Well, the thing is, logic can't be practiced. But what can be practiced are my typing questions. So because I'm asking 3 types of typing questions for TI, and that's it usually, which are syllogistic, and then the days of the week thing, like yesterday, tomorrow, and then genealogy questions. Because I'm only asking those 3 kinds, if you are determined to figure out a way to game them, you can game them. And this is the thing. This was the case. Is she gamed them last night, even though I asked a whole bunch of them, because the part of the problem with it is, if you got an answer that's either like valid or invalid, well, you can guess and get it right half the time. And if you're good at SE, you know when to just take a shot in the dark. And so I already knew that the TI Polar test was not entirely reliable, that it could be gamed. And I've determined that if somebody is going to successfully game it, they're almost certainly going to be an SFP. It's conceivable that an ENFJ would game it as well, but they wouldn't be able to. That wouldn't work because they can't game the SI polar test. I mean, the thing is, they don't need to game at their fourth slot, so, you know. But two A's and a B, three B's and a C. Huh. Well, maybe I should ask more of those. Yeah, those are kind of good because to game the SI test is, as far as I can tell, virtually impossible. And to game the NE test is also impossible. I did a shitty job of paying attention to the data I was getting from the person last night. It's like I had all the cues I needed to indicate to me that her NE was not dominant. The fact is, everything that she NE'd was way more concretized than an NE DOMS would have been. So like this kind of thing. Well, I asked her here's one of the NE questions I asked her. I said, yeah, you could, but to game it, you'd have to either have good NE, or even then, I mean, what you have to do is practice imitating an SI person telling an SI story. Anyway, the question I asked for NE was, I said, okay, tell me a story involving Flim Flam, a Jubilee, and a horse. That was a question I actually had thought of beforehand, before I'd even started the session, which is not that common, but I do occasionally have a... But then my original thought was, tell me a story about Flim Flam, a Jubilee, and horsecock. But she was kind of young, so I had left off the cock part. Anyway, the thing is, if you asked me to tell you a story involving Flim Flam, a Jubilee, and horsecock, I would say, no Flim Flam at the Jubilee, announced this sign in bold red letters. Love horsecock. Julie was mystified. Who was this horsecock? What was this Jubilee? And had it previously encountered difficulties with Flim Flam? But those questions would have to wait for another day, as she had an appointment with some Inuits for an igloo sale going on downtown. The Inuits had opened an igloo store recently in the middle of a previously decommercialized downtown area. They took up residence in an empty warehouse and filled it with refrigeration equipment so that they could build and serve as a store floor as well, a sales floor as well, a variety of different igloos, and sell to the local population. What they hadn't accounted for is a lack of igloo demand in Louisiana in the summer. People did like the idea of being in an ice house when it was so hot outside. The problem was the melting. The thing is, I didn't stay on point with the Jubilee and the Flim Flam or the horsecock for a second, right? But this person included them all through the whole story, and it was a very concrete series of things that they do, you know. I don't think people can make up SI. They can maybe practice SI style stories. I could make up SI, but I'm SI and NE. It's like the way to make up SI is NE. So if you got it, you know, it's like I should have definitely read her as not NE Dom. And I should have concluded that she was thereby gaming the TI test. The reason I asked so many TI questions, something was fishy. Something was fishy, you know? I could tell something was fishy. But she successfully fooled both me and Rachel by performing well in terms of quantity, kind of on both those questions, and not so well in terms of quality. And so I need to be evaluatory of that as well. The reason I tend to maybe weight it less heavily is because it requires more intuition on my part, and it's less standardizable. But if you want to find out if somebody's gaming, get them to repeat the story. That's smart right there, betting tips. There's a betting tip for you. I bet that would work. Did you ever see this game Box of Lies on Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon? That's a great NE test. No, I have not seen it, but maybe I'll check it out and see what it has to offer. Well, ENFJs, they have a repository of personal stories they bust out when the situation's appropriate. I had this ENFJ I knew named Parker, who was a car salesman, and every time somebody would drive into the lot and that they had on their car a sticker or something that showed that they had dogs, he'd bust out the story of his 4 dogs, and he wouldn't mention that they had died years before. You know, it's like their SI story stays with them, and is useful as such, according to their purposes. And it's where exactly it lands in time doesn't matter. You know, I'm getting one of those horrible nose beard hairs that I get. For some reason, I grow hairs on this part of my nose. And I have to pluck them, or else, if I didn't pluck them ever, I'd eventually grow a nose beard, I guess. Speaking of fishy, there was this blind guy, right? He takes a daily walk, and he's right in front of the fish market. He takes a deep breath and says, hello, ladies. Oh, new groove. That joke is deeply offensive. Ladies don't smell like fish. They smell like flowers and sunshine. Well, it just directs the intruders to two passageways. I think they might meet at the end. Boys are from Mars and women have vaginas, you say? Well, that may be true. I think that's kind of offensive. Those two things should be parallel, you know, parallelism. It checks SI as well, but you could be first or second TI and follow along at speed and not have to use SI to get those right. If you can keep up in real time, you don't need to use SI. So, while people who don't have first or second TI will be that'll tell you something about their SI. It won't tell you about their SI necessarily if they are first or second TI. People, look, I never smell any fish because, why? Rachel and I take baths before we have intercourse. That's the sensible thing to do. Everybody should do that. I mean, there definitely are attractive vaginas and less attractive vaginas. More and less attractive. Rachel has an unusually attractive vagina. The swipe check, huh? No. Okay. Let's move away from that topic because you guys are being gross now, okay? So stop being gross and grossing me out with your grossness. Look, it's not like I can claim that my scrotum is some marble statue of beauty. I'm not actually only saying that because I'm her husband. If it weren't the case, I wouldn't mention it at all, I guess. Rachel and I don't really. I guess we're not FI enough to. Oh, God. Okay, can we please not? Can we not have this conversation? Ay, ay, ay. I'm baby pig poop face. Okay? I can't handle these kind of adult conversations. During the kissing scenes and shows on Netflix, I have to fast forward 10 seconds. I don't like looking at that stuff. I don't like I don't like intruding on their intimate moments in that fashion. I think that's privacy time. I go like this. I don't want to see that part. Cool, Mokeem. Can you not, please? You know what I'm going to do if you keep it up? I'm going to send my cavalry of unicorns to stab you right in the butthole. Is that what you want? Because that's what you're going to get. You're going to get a unicorn horn right in the butthole. So you better knock it off. I mean, listen, we just started talking about that self-help lounge. Well, it's probably that I haven't been on much lately as well, self-help, so you've probably not been suggested any ongoing live streams. That's the only thing they're good for, Ludafe. Is to use them to threaten people with unicorn horn butt stabbings. You don't believe me? You don't believe me that I haven't been on much lately? It's true, though. Whether you believe it or not. If you mean you don't believe that I'm going to stab you in the butt with a unicorn horn, well, you should believe it. No, that just came up after I believe it was New Groove made a body joke. Then the subject erupted into sex talk. Before you know it, it's going to be nothing but poo-poo and pee-pee around here. It depends what it's most recently stabbed. You don't want to taste unicorn horn after it stabbed somebody in the butt. Not me, just the unicorn horn. And then I guess they have their own way of unicornally cleaning it, you know. I think they rub it against the furry bark of the willow tree. Yeah. Well, you're walking in, I suspect, here at an ending as well. We've been going now for almost 3 hours. I think I got about 10 minutes left, and then I'm gonna wrap it up. It's been a good stream. I feel like good conversation occurred. Conversations about things that mattered. Conversations about the underworld, about angels, about clouds, about dark matter. Conversations about the moral development of South America under the Spanish. Conversations regarding the Falkland Islands. Conversations regarding unicorns. Lots of conversations. I didn't say 30 minutes. I don't think it's going to be 30 minutes. It might be. But, it's hard to predict what you're going to do, right? Yeah, all kinds of conversation topics. We talked about goats, sheep, and non-goats, non-sheep. Which is like, wow. That's the whole range of things. Oh, you. We don't want your naked HD fun best adult dating site. No, it's not so much that. It's more me whether I say what I'm going to do. If I were to say I'm going to keep streaming for 30 minutes, I'd probably end right away. If I was going to say I'm just going to, I don't know. It's hard to say what I'm going to do. Is asking questions to know more information about doing something before doing it an action type, or it's a deliberation thing most of all. So, deliberation DOMs, FI DOMs, and TI DOMs are most likely to do that. No. Betting tips 3,000, I cannot. Hi, Shuffler. Every day you shuffling. Wrapping things up. It's hit the 3-hour mark. Been an interesting stream. A lot of good information, I think, discussed and so forth. And you know what they say about information? Good information is better than bad information. That's what they say. Seems a little hot. It's a little hot. What would you choose, and what do you think would be better? You'd be better at fixing doorknobs or working in a call center for one day? And the person answers, I would fix the doorknobs, but I think I'd better at the call center. What would you conclude from that answer? Not much. I would say, okay, well, it's possible they just want to change a pace. Or it's possible that they feel already that they know how they'd perform on the call center, but they don't know how they'd perform on the fixing the doorknobs. Seems like a lark. It could mean any number of things. I'd need to ask for clarification, or I just sort of write it off as not a very informative thing to ask about. I don't really ask that question anymore, partially for that reason. Well, it is a very useful word. It fills in for anything you want. Well, that person's back again. They sure are into adult dating. It's like, is there any other kind of dating site? I know, Dark Sunshine. El Nino, my ass. Call those storms. Where is the rain? pee in the sink, and it's just the right height to catch all of the undesired splatter. And when I'm done, I'll go outside and climb a ladder. I will go up there and take me a bucket and pour water inside. And I'll say, hey, Mr. Cloud, drop it from the bottom. Hey, Mr. Cloud, won't you drop it from the bottom? Hey, Mr. Cloud, drop it from the bottom on me. Hi, Aga. We'll have a few songs here before we say goodbye, I suppose. It was 100,000 million years ago. Time ran slow. Nobody had to show. Place the slabs below and let them go while they will start to grow. More years ensue and tears gnashing through. The oldest slabs come into view. Unchangingly true and eternally new. Oh, when the slope appears in charge today. Options at large or other ways. Give each a chance now. Once quick to check, but don't get caught standing on deck. The slope presents a I don't remember how to play that song. I do not remember how to play that song. So I'm not going to play that song any further because I don't remember. But it was a good idea anyway. I liked the idea of playing it. Here's Gregory in disguise, hands in his pockets. Now he's walking down the drive. Averts his eyes. He doesn't want you guys to realize that he's Gregory in disguise, hands in his pockets. Now he's walking down the drive. Averts his eyes. He doesn't want you guys to realize that he's Gregory in disguise. He hates the lies, wants to confront the men, always telling them, but every time he tries, they only run and hide. Again he is denied the chance to yell at them. So now he's Gregory in disguise, hands in his pockets. Now he's walking down the drive. Averts his eyes. He doesn't want you guys to realize that he's Gregory in disguise, hands in his pockets. Now he's walking down the drive. Averts his eyes. He doesn't want you guys to realize that he's Gregory in disguise. He hates the lies, wants to confront the men, always telling them, but every time he tries, they only run and hide. Again he is denied the chance to yell at them, until the bridge brings a new approach. Sneakily he'll try to encroach up on the guilty, then perhaps he'll get the chance to yell at them. He's Gregory in disguise, hands in his pockets. Now he's walking down the drive. Averts his eyes. He doesn't want you guys to realize that he's Gregory in disguise, hands in his pockets. Now he's walking down the drive. Averts his eyes. He doesn't want you guys to realize that he's Gregory in disguise. When I was younger, it seemed that everything gleamed. I don't know what happened to me, but I've lost that sense of ecstasy, and I don't know if I'll ever see it again. If you follow my lead, you'll discover I'm loster than you, and you'll wanna know the way to get back out to wherever it was you thought you knew. And tomorrow will be just like today, I'll be lost then too. It's a matter of mood as much as a matter of will. And the things I do and the direction I point to still seem a part of me, though departedly. And I wonder if I'll ever see them again. Bum-ba-dee-da, ba-dee-da-dee-da, bum-ba-dee-da, da-da-doo. Bum-ba-dee-da, ba-dum-ba-doo-doo, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. It's a very cloudy day in Los Angeles, and today we run out of time. Struggles past, struggles still to come. The day is nearly done. Someone buy us some more time. Cloudy day in Los Angeles, cloudy day in LA. I'm no sort of evangelist, but I have something to say. Life can strangely be forgiving to those who stay awake all night, and mostly voices seem to give in. They'll try to sap your will to fight, but whether I'm supposed to be here or just be soon forgotten, noise is sort of based on what I see here, and also on what I avoid. It's a very cloudy day in Los Angeles, and today we run out of time. Struggles past, troubles still to come. The day is nearly done. Will someone buy us some more time? Cloudy day in Los Angeles, cloudy day in LA. I'm no sort of evangelist, but I have something to say, something to say. That was pretty good, I guess. Not too bad. Every life lived reaches a time when the road splits in two. There are dark times, times of despair, times when it's hard to feel good. That's when I'll look for my sack full of solvency and my satchel of helpful goods. A satchel of helpful goods, satchel of helpful goods, satchel of helpful I'm there, will there be anybody else around? Or will I travel all alone? That's when I look for my sack full of solvency and that satchel filled up with bones. Yeah, that satchel, now nothing but home. Satchel of helpful goods, 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 satchel of helpful goods. You know why, you know what's one thing that makes me pretty convinced you're an INTJ as well, Jonathan? Although not really super convincing, but it's another piece of evidence, I guess, to put on the pile. Is that you're really bothered by clubs successfully effing of me in that one instance, to an extent that it doesn't make any sense unless you are effing polar. It's like, that's not indicative of a problem. It's indicative of a single instance where he took advantage of a one-time opportunity, you know? So, to me, that suggests your interpretation of that whole thing, or your, like, fretting about that whole thing, is suggestive to me of effing polar. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that. No, I'm not going to Anime Con. No, I'm not. My dad suggested it, but I don't want to go to some Anime Con. No, I don't want to open up a document to look at it. Boba Fett, so I only played songs that I had memorized, which aren't that many songs, really. Alright, off I go. Have a pleasant day, to and fro. Make your way from mo to mo, from show to show, from ho to ho. And as you do, go slow, lest you should crash into a building. You're welcome. Thank you for staying for the songs. Those of you who did, I appreciate it. And for those who attended who have already left, well, I don't have any thank yous for you that you would hear, so there's no reason for me to give them. Thank you, Peter Dintici, for hiding that strange person who's so obsessed with nudity.